stop. Before you watch this video, I want you to think about someone you trust completely. Your boss, your business partner, your investor, your colleague. Now imagine they have been lying to you for years, smiling to your face, shaking your hand, while secretly destroying everything you built together. That is not fiction.
That has happened 5 times on the biggest stages in business history. And today, we are going to go through every single one. From a company worth $70 billion that was completely fake, to a man who stole $65 billion from people who trusted him completely, to a woman who convinced the smartest investors in the world that her technology worked, when it never did. Not even close. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will never look at trust the same way again. Story number 1. Enron Corporation. Houston, Texas, 1985. A small natural gas company. Nothing special. Until Ken Lay decided he wanted to build the most powerful energy company in the world. And he was willing to do absolutely anything to get there. By 2000, Enron was valued at $70 billion. $70 billion! It was the 7th largest company in America. Fortune magazine named it the most innovative company in America. 6 years in a row! Every analyst on Wall Street loved it. Every investor wanted a piece of it. Every newspaper wrote glowing articles. There was just one problem. Almost none of it was real. Almost none of it was real. Here is what they actually did. Enron had a secret weapon. They called it mark-to-market accounting. In normal accounting, you record profits when you earn them. Enron got permission to record profits the moment they signed a contract, even if the money would not arrive for 10 years, even if the project would never work, even if the contract would fall apart. They booked the profit immediately. Then they created hundreds of secret shell companies, special purpose entities they called them. Sounds fancy. What they actually were was hiding places. Places to dump all the debt, all the failure, all the losses. So when investors looked at Enron, they saw a perfect company. Massive profits, 0 debt. Because the debt was hidden in companies nobody knew existed. Jeff Skilling, the CEO, described this to analysts as a black box. He literally told investors there was information he would not share with them. And they said, "Great, sign me up." Then, in 2001, a single analyst asked the question everyone else was afraid to ask. His name was Richard Grubman. On an earnings call, he pointed out that Enron was the only financial institution that did not produce a balance sheet or cash flow statement. Skilling called him, live on the call, an asshole. The word he used was stronger than that, but the question cracked the dam. Sharon Watkins, an Enron VP, wrote a letter to Ken Lay. She said the company might implode in a wave of accounting scandals. They ignored her. Then the Wall Street Journal started investigating, and it all came apart. In December 2001, Enron filed for bankruptcy. The stock went from $90 per share to less than $1. Investors lost $74 billion. 20,000 employees lost their jobs and their entire retirement savings because they had been encouraged to invest them in Enron stock. Ken Lay died before going to prison. Jeff Skilling was sentenced to 24 years.
And Arthur Andersen, one of the most respected accounting firms in the world, was destroyed entirely because they signed off on everything. Every lie, every hidden debt, every fake profit. They signed their name to it, and their reputation died with Enron. The lesson? The more someone tells you they cannot explain how they make money, the more you should run. Story number 2. Bernie Madoff. If you wanted to invest with Bernie Madoff, he would probably say no. That is not a joke. Madoff's fund was exclusive. You had to know someone. You had to be invited. This made people want in even more. He was the former chairman of the Nasdaq Stock Exchange. He was respected, admired, trusted by the most sophisticated investors in the world. Banks, hedge funds, charities, celebrities, universities. They all gave him their money. And for decades, he sent them back statements showing consistent returns, year after year. Even when the market crashed, Madoff made money. Even when every other fund lost, Madoff gained. This should have been the warning sign, because it is mathematically impossible to consistently beat the market like Madoff claimed. But nobody wanted to believe that, because the returns were too good to question. What Madoff was actually doing was not investing the money at all. He was running the largest Ponzi scheme in history. He took money from new investors and used it to pay old investors. Simple as that. No investments, no strategy, no magic formula. Just money moving from new hands to old hands. For 30 years. He stole $65 billion. And the only reason it ended was because in 2008, during the financial crisis, too many clients needed their money back at the same time, and Madoff did not have it. He confessed to his sons. His sons turned him in the next day. In 2009, Madoff was sentenced to 150 years. He died in prison in 2021 at 82 years old, alone. His son Mark, who turned him in, took his own life 2 years after his father's arrest. The human cost of this betrayal? It destroyed families. It wiped out charities. It eliminated life savings that took decades to build. The lesson? If returns are always good, no matter what the market does, something is wrong. Story number 3. Elizabeth Holmes. She dropped out of Stanford at 19. She had a vision to revolutionize healthcare. She wanted to create a device called the Edison that could run hundreds of blood tests from just one drop of blood. Not a vial. If it worked, it would change medicine forever. Cheaper tests, faster results, blood tests available everywhere. No more needles. The idea was beautiful. The problem was, it did not work. It never worked. Not even close to working. But Holmes was magnetic, charismatic, brilliant at selling a vision. She wore a black turtleneck like Steve Jobs. She lowered her voice to sound more authoritative. She surrounded herself with the most powerful people in the world. Henry Kissinger on her board, George Shultz on her board, James Mattis on her board. All lending their credibility to her story. By 2014, Theranos was valued at $9 billion for technology that did not work. What was actually happening behind the scenes was that Theranos was running most of its blood tests on normal commercial machines from other companies, while telling clients it was using their revolutionary Edison. And the results were sometimes dangerously wrong. One cancer patient was incorrectly told their cancer had returned. Imagine receiving that news based on a lie.
John Carreyrou, a journalist at the Wall Street Journal, started investigating in 2015. Holmes called him dangerous. She had her security team follow his sources. She threatened legal action. Everything to stop the story. But the story published, and Theranos collapsed. Holmes was convicted in 2022 of fraud and conspiracy.
She was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in prison. The lesson? Charisma is not proof. Impressive board members are not proof. A compelling story is not proof. Ask to see the technology work in real life, in front of you, before you invest a single dollar.
Story number 4. WorldCom. If Enron was complex, WorldCom was simple. Brutally simple. Bernie Ebbers built WorldCom into the second largest long-distance phone company in America.
At its peak, WorldCom controlled 50% of all internet traffic in the USA. Half the internet. Then, the dot-com bubble burst, and WorldCom's business started shrinking. Ebbers had a problem. He had borrowed hundreds of millions of dollars personally, using WorldCom's stock as collateral.
If the stock went down, he lost everything personally. So he needed the stock to stay up, which meant the numbers had to look good. He told his CFO, Scott Sullivan, make the numbers work. Sullivan found the simplest fraud in corporate history.
Line costs, the money WorldCom paid other companies to use their networks, were an expense, a normal operating expense. Sullivan reclassified them as long-term investments. That is it. That is the entire fraud. Change one accounting category.
By doing this, instead of showing those costs as expenses that reduce profit, they showed them as investments that would pay off in the future. The same money, different box on a spreadsheet. $11 billion in losses, hidden by moving a number to another column. The fraud was so simple that WorldCom's own internal audit team discovered it.
In 2002, when internal auditor Cynthia Cooper started asking questions, WorldCom collapsed within weeks. The largest bankruptcy in US history at that time. $180 billion lost by investors. 30,000 employees lost their jobs.
Ebbers was sentenced to 25 years. Sullivan received 5 years for cooperating. The lesson? The simplest frauds are often the biggest because nobody thinks to question the basics.
Story number 5, and this one did not just destroy a company. It broke the entire world economy. Lehman Brothers. Founded in 1850, 158 years old when it collapsed. By 2008, it was the 4th largest investment bank in America. $600 billion in assets, 25,000 employees. And at the center of it all, Richard Fuld, the man they called the gorilla of Wall Street. Fuld bet everything on the U.S. housing market. He took billions of dollars and invested them in mortgages. Not just any mortgages, subprime mortgages. Loans given to people who could not actually afford them. And then Lehman Brothers bundled these loans together, called them mortgage-backed securities, and sold them to investors worldwide as safe investments. But they were not safe. They were built on loans that could not be repaid. And Fuld knew the housing market was starting to wobble. So he used a trick called Repo 105. At the end of every financial quarter, Lehman would temporarily move $50 billion of toxic assets off its books, sell them to banks in the Cayman Islands with a secret agreement to buy them back. So when investors looked at the books at the end of each quarter, they saw $50 billion less debt, $50 billion more cash. Everything looked fine. Until it did not. September 15, 2008. Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy. $600 billion in assets. Gone. The largest bankruptcy in United States history. And what followed was the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. Stock markets crashed worldwide. Banks stopped lending to each other. Businesses could not get loans. People lost their homes, their savings, their jobs. All because one investment bank made bets it could not afford and hid how bad the situation was until the moment it was too late. Fold collected $480 million in personal compensation between 2000 and 2007. He was never charged criminally. He still walks free today. The lesson? Sometimes the biggest betrayal is legal. And the people who cause the most damage never go to prison. 5 stories, 5 betrayals, and in every single case, people saw the warning signs. Analysts questioned Enron. Mathematicians said Madoff was impossible. Scientists warned about Theranos. Accountants at WorldCom saw the fraud. Economists warned about Lehman.
But here is the psychology behind why nobody acted. It is called motivated reasoning. When something benefits us, when returns are high, when stock is rising, when the story is beautiful, our brains actively resist information that contradicts it. We do not want to know the truth, because the truth would mean giving up the gain. This is why smart people, brilliant people, get betrayed. Not because they are stupid, because they are human. The brain finds it far easier to believe a comfortable lie than to accept an uncomfortable truth. And every single person in these 5 stories had that moment. The moment they could have asked the hard question, but chose not to. So the final question is not, how did they get away with it? The final question is, what question are you choosing not to ask today? In your business, in your investments, in your life. Because the greatest protection against betrayal is the courage to ask the uncomfortable question before it is too late. Subscribe for more videos like this every week. Drop a comment. Which betrayal shocked you most? And share this with someone who needs to see it. See you next time.